Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first civil rights lecture. This is on the various important individuals and people of the civil rights movement within Georgia. Benjamin Mays was born in South Carolina in 1895 to parents who were former slaves. Like Alonzo Herndon, he went on to experience a great deal of success in life. He was a lifelong educator who eventually goes on to work at Morehouse College and was the dean of Howard University School of Religion, and then, like I said, worked at Morehouse College by becoming president in 1940. He was very active in the Atlanta community, especially when in regards to education, and he became the first African American school board president. He was a mentor to many of his students at Morehouse, including Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and he continued to serve as a mentor to Dr. King throughout King's life. Mays retired from Morehouse in 1967 and then continued his work with Atlanta's Board of Education, retiring in 1981. Today, there is a street and a high school named after him in Atlanta. Herman Talmadge, son of Eugene Talmadge, served as a governor of Georgia just like his father. He was just very much like his father, a strict segregationist, and opposed all attempts to integrate Georgia's public schools, which is what was going on during his terms as governor. He did have some positive aspects during his time as governor. He restructured the state highway department, created the forestry commission, and did a lot of environmental work in soil conservation, also county health programs, and even did some reforms for the state prison system. His biggest legacy is in education. He paved the way to create in our state constitution that schools would go from grades 1 to 12. Kindergarten comes later, and he lengthened the school year to 9 months. And previously, our school year in Georgia had always been 3 months because of the farming season, and children were needed on the farm, or they were also working in the factories to help supplement their parents' income. But now he's lengthened the school year to 9 months to give children an appropriate education. He also raised the standards for the actual buildings that schools had and the equipment that they used, and transportation, school buses, and the curriculum, what teachers taught. He set higher expectations for what was expected of school systems to do for students. So that's another great positive aspect of his time. In order to pay for all these educational changes, Georgia incurred a state 3% sales tax. After leaving the governor's office, he did serve in the U.S. Senate until 1981. Now, like his father, as I said before, he was a strict segregationist. He didn't want to integrate public schools. So all of these programs that he instituted for education were just for the white students. He did not want to see these same changes happen for the black students. Martin Luther King Jr., I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with who he is, was born in January 1929 in Atlanta. His grandfather was one of the founders of the NAACP chapter in Atlanta. He attended several colleges, including Morehouse. He was married to Coretta Scott and was very interested in Mahatma Gandhi's nonviolent approach to bring about social change. That's why, as he was working during the civil rights movement, he was nonviolent. He wanted an approach that was a peaceful change. He believed in a four-part approach to gain civil rights: nonviolent actions, work through legal remedies, work through the voting ballot, elect people that are going to bring about change, and economic boycotts. And we'll talk about those more later. He led several protests across the South as a leader of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and gave famous speeches including "I Have a Dream" and "I've Been to the Mountaintop." After giving his "I've Been to the Mountaintop" speech, the next day he was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. Hamilton Holmes and Charlayne Hunter. We kind of combine these two because in January of 1961, they were the first two students that were admitted to the University of Georgia. Now, they faced harsh criticism while they were there, and just students that were very mean and vicious to them, to the point where Charlene even went home for a period of time because she was so scared. But eventually they do finish their degrees at UGA. Um, and the reason that they were able to get into UGA, and it was a successful integration of the university, was because of Governor Vandiver. He really worked to get them into the college and keep them safe while they were there, and really pleaded to get Charlene back when she left. But alumni and other state politicians pleaded with the governor, don't do this, close the university, don't allow their entrance, but he refused. Vandiver went forward with the integration, and they integrated the University of Georgia. Holmes later went on to practice medicine until his death in 1995, and he practiced medicine in Atlanta. And Hunter, now Hunter Galt, is currently a national newspaper and public television reporter. I remember seeing her name when Nelson Mandela passed away this year. She was one of the reporters who was there reporting on his death. Maynard Jackson was sworn in as Atlanta's youngest and first African American mayor in January of 1974. During his time as mayor, he created neighborhood planning units to kind of give local community citizens a voice in their local politics. He made changes in the organization and administration of the police and fire departments and city government. He led the development and expansion of MARTA. He expanded Hartsfield International Airport, and after his death, that airport now is what we know it as Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. His final legacy to Atlanta were his many efforts that he made to help bring the 1996 Olympic Games to the city. He worked tirelessly on getting the games to come here and was one of the key individuals in letting the world know that Atlanta would be a great place to host the Olympic Games. He ultimately did die in 2003. Lester Maddox, he was a governor in 1967. He was a segregationist and a restaurant owner. His restaurant, the Pickwick, was infamous for its being a segregated restaurant, and during the 1960s, many African Americans would attempt to dine in the Pickwick, and there's even images and videos out there of Lester Maddox attacking these African Americans that would try to go in and get served at the Pickwick restaurant. And he's got guns, he comes out with an axe. I mean, there's multiple images of him attacking various people that tried to integrate the restaurant. So he closed that restaurant instead of allowing it to be desegregated. But so it surprised many Georgians when he did become governor that he ended up appointing more African Americans to state boards and commissions than all prior governors combined. So any governor before him, you add up all the various African Americans that they appointed to boards, and Maddox still appointed more. So despite being such a segregationist and not really a nice guy, when he was governor, he kind of turned over a new leaf, I guess you could say. He reformed state prisons and integrated the Georgia State Patrol. He increased spending on teacher salaries and higher education. And he established what were known as People Days, where twice a month, any Georgian could come and visit the governor's mansion to talk about anything they wished. I find this kind of idea odd by today's standards, because I don't think any governor would ever do this today, allow just anyone to come to the mansion and sit down and have a chat with them. But it happened during his time as governor, and it was actually successful. The people felt very tied and connected to their governor versus previous governors. He could not succeed himself, so he ran for lieutenant governor in 1970 and was elected overwhelmingly. And here's our last individual that we're going to talk about. There are many other Georgians that are connected to the civil rights movement, but these are just some of the key ones that we do discuss. And our last one is Andrew Young. He was a member and later the director of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference that we mentioned before that Martin Luther King Jr. worked with. He established citizenship schools while running the SCLC, which the SCLC really worked on teaching nonviolent organizing strategies to potential black leaders. They were targeting students and young males and females to go about nonviolent organization strategies, things like bus boycotts, sit-ins, those kinds of items that we'll kind of talk about some of them in class. He was a trusted aide to MLK and was actually with him when he was assassinated. In 1972, he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives and then re-elected twice after that. In 1977, President Carter named him as the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. And then in 81, he began the first of 2 terms as Atlanta's mayor. He worked with Maynard Jackson on the Olympic Committee and was also instrumental in getting the Olympic Games to come to Atlanta. And currently today he is an adjunct professor at Georgia State University, meaning that he kind of works. Sometimes he doesn't teach all the time, but occasionally he will be teaching classes at Georgia State University. That is the end of our lecture on civil rights individuals and people, and we will be talking about events and items in the next video.